Welcome to Amsterdam, quite possibly the most photogenic place in the world. But what many people might not know about it is that Amsterdam also has an extremely active and vibrant community of writers who are writing in English. Amsterdam has attracted writers from all over the world and continues to inspire like few other places ever have before. I'm Bob Brager, and welcome to my adopted home city. The Amsterdam Writers Platform has been created to introduce to you the writers who either live and work in this city or those who have been inspired by Amsterdam. Welcome to Amsterdam Writers Platform. We're delighted to be here at one of Amsterdam's truly iconic locations, historic Rembrandt House, where the great painter lived and worked from 1639 until 1658. This is the perfect place to speak to our guest today on Amsterdam Writers Platform. She is one of the world's experts on Rembrandt. She has gathered together the broad wealth of research on Rembrandt. She's done her own powerful investigation on this painting, and then she wrote a book that proves that sometimes art can explain history better than anything else. Her book brings to life one of Rembrandt's greatest paintings, The Anatomy Lesson, a painting which shows the dissection of a human body for scientific research. I'm delighted to welcome Nina Siegal. Hi, Nina.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Listen, before anything, let's just talk about the book. You've written this wonderful book, The Anatomy Lesson.
I came with a grant to do research for about 9 months. It turned into a project that lasted about 6 years.
Yes, but why Rembrandt? Why this painting? How did this come to be? Why are you interested?
It goes back to my childhood, actually. My dad came to Holland when he was right after medical school, and being a recent graduate of medical school, he was familiar with autopsies. So he picked up an image of the anatomy lesson of Dr. Childress as sort of commemorative of his own experience. And we had a very small reproduction in our house growing up. My dad was an immunologist at the height of the AIDS epidemic in New York. And he used to talk to me about the fact that he felt like a doctor in the dark ages because he could treat people but not save lives. And
so his research was somewhat like the investigation that was going on in the 16th century during this painting.
I guess so.
They were investigating things they didn't know much about.
Right, exactly. I didn't know that at the time. At the time I had no idea, but just looking at that image of this body on the table and all these men standing around looking like they have great authority, but you get the sense that they don't, I sort of felt like that was, in a way, a metaphor for what my dad was talking about. So it stuck in my mind, and of course, since it was on the wall, and it's a very riveting painting.
And you were a little girl,
yeah,
looking up at this body being exposed, and these men looking at the inside of the body.
Arm being torn apart, basically. And there are ways that if you look at it, you're not sure if the person is actually dead or alive sometimes, you know, or if you look at it a lot like I did as a child. So it really charged my imagination, and knowing very little about it, I of course made up narratives in my own mind about what it was.
Well, not only that, but you've done your own research.
Yes.
You went into the basic sources here in the Netherlands to find out more about the guy who was being dissected, what his life was like, what led him to that moment.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I just finished the book yesterday, I have to be honest with you. I loved the book. I really loved the book. And one of the things I loved about the book is the way it told the story. So what you've done, if I may say, you've taken the perspectives of the people in the life of the man who's being dissected, the woman he loved, a friend, the painter, the doctor, and you've told this story from all of their perspectives in the first person, showing the various facets of a person's life. How did you come to that approach? Because it's very, very effective.
Thank you. I think that when I initially came here, my concept was to write a novel about the dead man in this painting. And there were a few facts that I knew about him when I came over, because it's documented everywhere that his name was Adrian Soon, and that he was a petty thief, and that he was dissected on the day that he was executed in Amsterdam here.
Was that typical to use bodies from hangings?
Yes, that was the way they did it. Most of the, here and in England also, they would use bodies fresh off the gallows. And they kept detailed notes of who was dissected, so it was easy. Well, anybody who looked could find in the city archives the name of the person. And then what I found was, with the help of a researcher who was familiar with the archives, was a document that listed his entire criminal history from when he was...
Did he have a long criminal history?
From about the age of 19 to about the age of 28 when he was executed. Of course, we don't know when he was really born, so that's a very approximate. But it started out with a purse snatching here in Amsterdam, and when he was, I think, when he was about 19, and then he kind of moved around the country and did lots of little petty crimes, very small, house breakings, stealing loaves of bread, things like that, and then he was repeatedly caught and whipped or branded. Or
he was branded. When they banished him from a city, they would brand the symbol of the city on his body, so that everyone would know he wasn't.
Right, exactly. But then he would show up back again. So he ended up acquiring a kind of folk status, I think, because he was known as Aris the Kid, basically.
Right. Like Billy the
Aris
Kid.
the Kid, yeah. And that's what I thought of Billy the Kid, And so I was very curious more and more about who this man was. And Rembrandt, of course, is a character. It's sort of, how could I write a book about this without writing Rembrandt into it?
What kind of a guy was he? What did you find out about Rembrandt? Because he comes across in the book as sort of an odd duck, to be honest.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Well, he was definitely an odd duck. I mean, he was a very individual character, of course, for all time.
Yeah. He didn't care about mores or norms, it seems.
I think he was a deeply ethical person, actually. Based on his images, essentially, and based on the way that he interprets story from the Bible, and the way that he, even in this painting, I think the way that he brings the power of human compassion to his painting.
Well, in the book you describe that he decides he's going to use his art to redeem this tortured soul. He sees the scars on the body, the branding on the body. He knows how much this man has suffered. The woman who loved the man tried to rescue him from the gallows and tried to bring his body back. He was loved. And at one point, at the climax of the book, it seems, Rembrandt, as he's painting, says, "I'm going to make this man whole again." It's a wonderful scene. I also learned yesterday that you were a journalist for years.
Yes.
You were a writer on the New York Times. In fact, you
I
still
am.
are. You still are.
Yes.
Every month almost in the New York Times, you have a contribution about cultural life in the Netherlands. You're really showing this country and this city's cultural life to the world, and I want to acknowledge you for it. But you did that, before you did that, you were more a writer on the beat. You were writing personal stories in New York City about people who lived in New York City. And when I look at this book, I see a journalistic touch, to be honest. There's something about facts and capturing the essence of a situation quickly and efficiently that's in this book. Do you think that journalism has had a lot to do with your writing style?
Oh, yeah. I think one of the things that interests me most about writing is the opportunity it gives you to learn about history and facts and life. So I think I like writing, but I get really involved in the research because I just love consuming history.
It's a real contribution. You've made a real contribution to our knowledge of the period. And through your book, you've illuminated it through the work of art, as I mentioned before. You've made it true. I mean, this book is as much a work of history as it's a work of fiction, I think. in the reality that you convey. You also have a great skill for conveying the atmosphere of the time, the feeling for 17th century Amsterdam. And you do it by tying it to modern Amsterdam. At one point you say, if you squint your eyes just in a certain way, this is in your introduction, you can see in today's Amsterdam what it was like at the time. Do you find inspiration in modern Amsterdam?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first moved here, I lived around the corner from this house. I lived on the outer side of Achterbergwal, which is right, it's actually, I never would have planned it, but it was equidistant from Dam Square to the Newmarkt, where the execution took place. So I was basically on the trail of Aris's body. And so I lived right exactly in the place where the action of the novel takes place. And even on the way biking over here today, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be late, and then I was like, no, I'm so lucky because I know all the back alleys of this section of town. I've walked all of them. And not all, but many, many, many of the original buildings are still here. So, and I think this sort of energy and feeling of the center of the city is still probably quite the same, in the sense that it's easy to project, I think, and also because I was seeped in this research for 2 years, really, it was I kind of lived in this fantasy in my own mind of where I was, and didn't pay any attention to contemporary life very much for a while.
Wow. Well, your book shows the results of your efforts. I want to thank you. This book is a triumph. Oh. Thank you for sharing it with us. You did a great job.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on Amsterdam Writers Platform.